Hello everyone, this is Oregon Moto John. We're doing a Scott steering stabilizer on this 2022 FE 350S. You can see I've got it set up, got the bike lifted up, have a wheel chock on the front wheel so it doesn't turn, have a tie down strap going from the frame headset area, just behind the headset area, to the front wheel, around the front wheel, so that we can hold that on there so that the forks, when I remove the top triple clamp and steering and this nut on the top of the steering and the handlebars, that the forks don't fall out. So we're removing these top triple clamps here, and having that strap will hold that all up. Wheel chock you probably wouldn't need, but a friend suggested that, and I just happened to have one for transport, so I just rolled it in there and jammed it in there, so the steering is less likely to turn. It can still turn. It's not holding it solid because it's not secured to my floor, but it's reasonably solid. So we're gonna install this kit from BRP and Scott's here. You can see we have the collar that goes around the headset, or the collar, just below the steering stem collar. Bolts on, it's a clamp on. Have a new nut that's lower profile, so it fits under, I guess, this. You can see this will fit on the BRP mount, Scott steering stabilizer. The BRP kit, I've used this a lot. It's got some bushings. I always swap the red ones out that it comes with, and the kit comes with the blue ones, so I put the blue ones in. They're supposed to be a little softer, more dampening. The red ones still have dampening, but they're probably a little more solid. You can use what your preference is. Have a cable guide, which you wouldn't have to have, but they offered it as an option. I thought my friends recommended that it could be helpful. Some new bolts. Oh, by the way, this thing's great. This is a kind of a grip mat. I guess a fellow who was in aviation made it, or used to be in aviation, and I love these things. I got it for Christmas a few years ago, and I didn't even know I needed it, but it's silicone. You can put little things in there. It has different pockets. This is the smaller one, and it's silicone, so if you wash this, you could set it on something. It won't slide off. It doesn't scratch, but if it were dirty, it probably would. Have some other screws that came with the kit, and then a new collar that's thinner. So let's get started. You can see we got it set up. First step is removing these upper bolts. Take off the handlebars. I saw one video where a fella attached the handlebars to the ceiling. I don't have anything really that's centered above the bike, and I don't really feel like moving the bike right now, so I'm just gonna rather than hang those handlebars from the ceiling, which is, I think, a good idea. I just don't have this configured right for that. I'm just going to put them probably up over the fender and maybe even strap them there so they don't roll around. So we're going to remove the handlebars. And it's a little messy right now because I kind of took out the heated grips that I have on here. Kind of move those wiring to the side right now. Let's get started. So let's take off the handlebars. And we're going to remove these triple clamp bolts. Remove this, pull the triple clamp off, and then we'll start reassembling everything. Handlebars are loosened off, as you can see. Next, I'm going to remove the face mask. When I displace the mask forward, I just set it on a towel that I set on the fender, and then the handlebars displace forward and just kind of nestle there behind the mask in front of the speedometer. Now it's just a matter of removing the riser bolts and the triple clamp bolts, and then this top nut, and then the clamp pinch bolt. I'll do that next. So as you can see, the riser bolts are out. The risers are off. I don't believe we'll be using those because we'll be using the new system with, I believe, these new bolts. And so next we're going to loosen up the top triple clamp bolts. This probably isn't necessary, but I went ahead and just made a little dot here and over here where the triple clamp kind of lines up with the forks, just so I'm not loosening the lower triple clamp bolts, so it shouldn't move, but in case they did, I want to make sure I get everything reasonably square, or where it was supposed to be initially. And then I marked the bottom, put a little line here so that I can get that at the right height. And then I also just observed it looks like you got a couple rings here on that top fork. So just I'm observing where that triple clamp will seat in. And again, I shouldn't change anyway because I'm not loosening the bottom triple clamp. So, but just to be sure, I want to get everything bolted up. You know, ideally it'll be in the same spot. So I've now loosened the triple clamp bolts, and now we're going to go loosen this one and this one. I test fitted up the VRP mount, and it does hit the speedometer, so I'm going to remove these speedometer bolts and just take that off and remount it with I found these in my kit. This must be for shimming the speedometer forward, I'm assuming. I also found those pieces, but I believe these are going to shim the speedometer forward. Just install behind it with the longer bolts to move it forward out of the way of these little nubbins here. Kind of funny, I was getting ready to put my speedometer space shimming kit in here, remove those two bolts, and then I realized, hey, I'm gonna have to pull this triple clamp off to put the collar on the headset, of course. It's on the head, under the head, the triple clamp on this headset collar, and that this collar is replaced with a thinner one, as well as this top bolt. But so I'm gonna wait on obviously putting that speedometer shim kit on there until I get my collar on. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that next. So I've never removed this triple clamp before, so it's just a matter of grabbing, and you kind of push up one side and you scoot up the other side, and you go back and forth, and it just scoots up a little bit each time, and with a little wiggling it's going to come right off. What I found works well is to go to one side, give it a little push, go to the other side. I put my thumb on the top here, give it a little push, and then back and forth. And I did need both hands to do that. It doesn't require a bunch of force, but it requires a little bit because it's a very, very tight fit, which it should be. As you can see, triple clamp has been removed. Now it's a matter of just removing this O-ring seal here and the collar. I've removed the O-ring seal. Now we're removing the stock collar, which is a little thicker than the Scott's one that we'll be using. We will not be reusing this collar. And then you can see there's a seal here. We're going to remove that. Just trying to keep everything in order here. I'm placing the parts that I'm not reusing over here. Have the stock risers, some of the bolts that came off these, because I obviously won't be using these because they'll be on here. And now it's just a matter of putting our triple clamp collar on. I might feather a little bit of new grease on top of that. I'm just using some Motorex bike grease that I have on hand. You wouldn't need to put extra grease in there. I mean, if it's a fairly new bike, but it never hurts to put a little extra grease in there since it's disassembled anyway. Now we're going to put this collar on here. See, it's a pinch bolt that goes on there. Sometimes people say you have to grind the welds with a file to make sure that they don't interfere with this fitting on here. So I'm going to test fit that on there to make sure it fits flush. I did not need to file the welds in this case, but my friend said often you do, to remove the slag so that this fits flush. Everything's sitting nice and level around here. And I have this centered. So now it's just a matter of putting on the seal and the collar, and then the O-ring on top. So here you can see I have the seal inside of here. I actually set it around this rim first. Put some grease in there so it makes a nice watertight seal. And tighten this clamp bolt down so it's nice and snug so this doesn't move. I also want to remove this pin, put grease on here. I'm going to do that next. That's supposed to be free floating in grease. This is awesome. We've got the collar on, or the Submount collar. We've got the new thinner collar provided with the seal underneath. And I did put a little layer of grease on that. Got the O-ring on. Now it's a matter of putting on the new part, or actually putting on the triple clamp, and then putting the Submount system on top. I'm on putting the triple clamp on. Just a note, I was trying to put it on by hand, and I did need have a rubber mallet here, and I just lightly tapped it back down. Don't go crazy, and I wouldn't use a hammer. You damage the soft aluminum, so I just used a rubber mallet and barely tapped it. Now we'll put the Scott's nut in, which is different than the stock one. This will be a lower profile one, so it slips under the BRP submount system. So I very lightly tighten this bolt up. Didn't snug this one up yet because I want to adjust the bearings here in a little bit to make sure I get the right play in the headset. But I'm just very lightly working back and forth on these. I'm not going to tighten them down all the way either. They're just basically bottoming them out just barely. The torque spec is stamped on the head is 17 Newton meters, so we're just kind of gonna, and this when I took it off too, barely had any tension on it, so we're just not putting a lot of tension on anything right now. We're gonna get the speedometer spacer in there and get the sub mount on, and then we'll work on torquing these to spec and adjusting the steering stem bearings. Case in point, once I set my mounting system on here and sub mount, it's going to be very hard to access this bolt to adjust the steering. What I'm going to go ahead and do is adjust the tension on the headset bearings, the play. Now, I tighten this up tighter than I thought it should be, just barely, and I've removed my strap around the headset now and the frame to the wheel. We don't need that anymore. I also removed my front wheel chock to the wheel. We don't need that anymore. And I'm just kind of got the bike on the center stand up and then feeling the free play in the steering or the resistance, and that's a little tight. This is very sensitive to adjustments here. So now I'm gonna take this and back it off and then retighten it slightly and recheck the play. A buddy told me to do this. Okay, now it's moving freely. And so you may have to play around with that a little bit, where you loosen and tighten and then recheck play versus how freely that's turning, and you want that to be barely snugged, and then you'll tighten the pinch bolt. It's kind of like adjusting mountain bike headset bearings in a sense, where you have a certain amount of free play there. You don't want it too tight, you don't want it too loose, and when you put on the front brake, sometimes you'll feel a little bit of a little movement in here as the bike kind of comes forward. So on this, these bearing tolerances are so tight, I don't think we'll find that, but if you ever feel that, then it's probably needs to be tightened up. But we just don't want these bearings to be in a bind. It's kind of like adjusting a wheel bearing. You want it to move freely, but not be loose. So that's kind of what I'm working with now. I played around with this quite a bit to get it right, and what seems to be the right adjustment on this is I basically get it finger tight, and then I just give it just barely anything more with my wrench. I'm talking, I wouldn't even say an eighth of a turn, like a tenth of a turn, if that. Just barely beyond finger tight seems to be what worked out well on this bike for the right adjustment. And I noticed when I removed this, the stock one, the OEM one, I was surprised at how loose it was. I mean, it's not something that you tighten down. It just barely takes any tension at all beyond finger tight. Once the tension was set on the steering stem bearings, tighten the triple clamp bolt very lightly to torque spec. Now I put Loctite on the new Submount stem. Put Loctite tight on both of those bolts. Something I like to use is this little blue, has a cap here, and it's just kind of like a glue stick. You just kind of put it on the bolts, and also put it on my speedometer mount bolts, and it just keeps things from coming out. So I'm gonna put these in, put the bar risers on top, and mount the speedometer, and we'll just keep putting things back together. Here's the exciting part. We got the steering stabilizer bolted on with these two mounting screws. I checked in here after greasing this pin. It looks nice and straight, and you want to make sure that that looks straight and flush, and it is. If this were cockeyed or something, it might mean I got this color on Maybe I'd need to file on the welds or something, you know, maybe it's on cockeyed, but no, it's on nice and straight and flush. And I always love BRP stuff. It just goes on so nice. Always fits up just perfect. That's why I keep using them again and again. And the Scott steering stabilizer, same thing. I've put those on a number of bikes. I rode for years without them, did okay, but once I started using them on gravel roads where handlebars want to move side to side, it just seems to smooth all that out. And it's less fatiguing, and I don't know, saves fatigue on the shoulders. Some of the things I've worked with, rotator cuff injuries and things, it's anything you can do to protect your shoulders is a good thing, because shoulders are fragile. You think they're not until you injure one and you realize how fragile shoulders are. It's a relatively unstable joint held together mainly with soft tissues and muscles. It's more like a golf tee than a deep ball and socket like a hip. It's more like a golf ball sitting on a golf tee. So which puts a lot of stress on the associated muscles around that joint. So anyway, steering stabilizer can help reduce stress on your shoulders, reducing fatigue and making it a little more enjoyable. So let's get the handlebars on, get the Speedo mount spacer up here, and we'll start putting things back together. But I just had to stop for a moment, and this is why we're doing this project, is for this moment right here, getting that on. So pretty excited about that. Handlebars are on and centered, adjusted. Now we've got this little bracket that's going to hold our cable off of our dampener. It's not necessary, but it'll be nice, makes it clean. Just remove these 2 screws. You could put it here or in this position. I think I'm going to go with this one. And then you have some bushings that you put in the screw holes, and then you put some new screws in on top. Here are the screws and bushings I'm talking about. See, these bushings go under the bracket into the Scott's dampener where the screw holes come out, or the screws come out, and then you just put the new screws they provide on top that come with this bracket. So if you have the option to get that when you're ordering this kit, I think it's worth it. We have the bracket in place, and the instructions talk about, you can place this at this point or this point. Turn the steering lock to lock to make sure you're in a good spot. It looks like there's tension here when I'm at this lock, but there actually isn't. That's really where it wants to be. I could have just as easily probably mounted this over here at this over one screw, and it would have worked as well. And then just don't over tighten these. These are small. They're going into aluminum. You don't want to strip out your stabilizer. That would be awful. So just hand tight, barely. Just don't over tighten those. Speedometer is mounted with these new shims in place, so it's pulled away to where it doesn't interfere with the BRP mount. And I believe that came with my kit, so that was nice. Last step is putting the mask back on. While I'm in here, I'm tightening up some wires. This is a offshoot here, not related to the steering dampener install, but I have a GPS. I like to run a GPS, even though my buddies make fun of me. Sometimes I don't know where I'm going, and even if I'm not specifically lost or generally lost, I might be specifically lost. So sometimes I can zoom out on my GPS and see which way I need to go. Especially with this bike, it has limited fuel. I may carry a canister with me in a backpack, but even then I just don't want to be driving around more than I need to. So I do like to run a GPS, and a good way to hook it up is I found this little thing that plugs in line to your headlight and gives you 2 little, it comes with bare wires, and you can just put a little connectors on here for your for my GPS. So now it's just a matter of plugging these in. So I put these on so that they'll fit those pin connectors, and then I plug this in line with the headlight while I'm back in here, and now I got power to my GPS. So that just plugs in line to your headlight. But thought you might find this useful because you could power a few different things. They don't recommend powering heated grips off of this because I don't think it's made to carry a lot of current, but for a GPS it's fine, or something other, maybe charging your phone. I think it would work, something that doesn't require a lot of current. So yeah, can't remember where I got that at the moment because I was ordering so many parts for this bike, but that might be helpful. So here it is, plugged in line to your headlight, and now I have a power source. I love it. Quick and easy. I think most of us guys with motorcycles are pretty particular about how we do things, so take some time, clean up your wiring. I mean, I found this relay flopping around. I couldn't figure out where it went. I mean, there's a few places up here, but it doesn't really fit, so I just zip tied it so it's not flopping around. Have some heated grip wiring I need to clean up, but yeah, take your time, do it right. If you do it right now, it might save you a repair later and tearing it back apart anyway. And you know, if you make it the best you can while you're putting it back together, then you can be really happy with the job when you're done. But if you start off kind of scabbing it together, then when you finish it, it's pretty bad. So, you know, if you do it the best you can all the way through, it usually turns out really good. So take a little extra time, get things tidy. So here it is, the BRP Scott's Steering Stabilizer Submount. All finished up, tidied up, looks good, fits nice. Everything's working well and put back together. So yeah, I highly recommend this kit. It went together well, and we yeah, it's ready to ride. Just a final word, be sure to, you don't forget to snug these up to 17 Newton meters. You know, just didn't want to forget to mention that. And double check your handlebar bolts. Everything should be snugged up and ready to ride. All right, thanks for joining me on the Submount. And this Submount system does raise the handlebars a little bit, which I'm not even very tall, but it still was good for me to get my handlebars up. They were just a little low from the factory for me, and I'm only like 5'6½". So if you're much taller than that, you're probably going to need a little rise. So the Submount system was a good way to go because it does get the bars up a little bit. I think. Yeah, it's all buttoned up. Just be sure that you tighten your pinch bolts here to 17 Newton meters, your triple clamp pinch bolts, and you alternate back and forth just a little bit at a time. Do one a little bit and go back to the other one. And then when they both kind of bottom out with your torque wrench at the right 17 Newton meters, you know you're there. Don't over tighten them. It's aluminum, soft. Those don't need to be crazy tight. Take your time working back and forth on these triple clamp bolts. I mean, you just got to take it slow and do a little bit on one and then go to the other one. And you're going to do just a little bit on this side too. Give it a turn or so, turn or two, and then come back to this one. This is my torque wrench set to spec, 17 Newton meters. And you're just going to work back and forth on here patiently. And just take it slow until it clicks. Getting close, I can kind of tell we're getting real close. There's that one, and then we're going to go back and forth a few times just to make sure we got it. Getting close, I can feel it. There's that one. Okay, let's go back to this one. There's that one. Back to this one. Okay, back to this one. So it just takes some patience. There's that one. And they're both there. Now they're not moving anymore. See, so I'm not turning anymore. Okay, there you go. Just one last word. I've never installed a Submount before where you had to install the collar. I've put it on a 690 where you didn't have to take the stem apart. It was actually really easy. But this is the first bike I put a steering stabilizer on where I had to put the collar on under this steering retainer. And it wasn't bad. So this was my first time that I'd catch it on film for you guys. If you have any other comments, things that make it easier, please put it in there so somebody else can learn from the information. I know this install went really smooth because of other videos that I watched, and the key thing was having that, you know, front fork, having that tie down going through your wheel up around your frame just behind your headset. So that was key. I didn't have any problems with anything moving. And then the wheel chuck I think is a good idea, but you could probably get by without that. You know, the instructions from Scott say you could build something out of wood, which I think would work great. I just happen to have one that I use in my cargo trailer when I'm hauling bikes, so I just grabbed it and jammed it under the front wheel. All right, so there you have it. If I can do it, you definitely can. The handlebars feel so much better when I'm in the cockpit on this thing with them moved up. I did cock the handlebars forward just a little bit, so I did have to readjust my clutch and mirror mount and all these things mounts. All you need is a star bit and a, you know, Phillips screwdriver, so it's not a big deal. But man, it feels good. The cockpit feels better. Handlebars up and forward just a tad. you know, didn't move the mount forward, just the handlebars forward. So when I stand up, I don't feel like I'm falling over my bars. So really, really good upgrade. Highly recommend. And I'd say for a first time doing it, I thought it was pretty easy. Just take your time and you'll be fine. Thanks for watching today. Please like and subscribe if you like what we're doing. I have a graphics kit that's going to go on this bike just to kind of make it look a little more appealing. I did put the Best Dual Sport Bike power up kit on here, and with the end cap, fuel rail, and the grunt for the exhaust, and the little piggyback tuner. So hopefully that works out well. It went on easy, but we'll do a first ride with all that installed so you can see what you think of that. Anyway, thanks for joining, and we'll have some other projects to come on this bike as well. So stay tuned, and we'll keep building this bike.